You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. This episode, we take a look at Honeypots and Canary files, two tools that can tell you that a bad guy is poking around your network before they've done any real damage. Dr. Mike Saylor is back with me and Prasanna to break down how these work, why layered security matters, and what the actual difference is between a honeypot and a canary file. We also cover how to stand one up without spending a fortune, why clock synchronization matters more than you might think. That is, if you ever want your evidence to hold up. And Mike and I also have a little bit of news about our new O'Reilly book, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Backup Wrap-Up. I'm your host, W. Curtis Preston, a.k.a. Mr. Backup, and I have with me a guy who's apparently in a hurry, so we got to get started. Prasanna Malayan, how's it going, Prasanna?
Let's go. Come on, fast. You know how I do all my YouTube at 2x? Can we do this at like 2x?
Yeah, I don't think we can do that.
At least pretend to speak faster.
Yeah. I think maybe this episode might be quick. I always say that, and then next thing I know, 45 minutes later. Yeah.
I used to run around with my hair on fire.
Yeah, I see what you did there. And speaking of hair on fire, we have our guest with us once again, Dr. Mike Saylor. How's it going, Mike?
Whoop, whoop. It's going well.
And he, unlike me, is the possessor of physical books. Do you have it nearby? Can you hold it up?
Don't have it nearby.
Oh, I am so disappointed in you, Mike. So both of us have been waiting for the physical shipment of the book that we just wrote, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery, and he beat me. I guess shipment to Texas is faster than shipment to California. I don't know. Maybe it's because over in Boston.
Pictures of it.
Oh, there is a picture of it. By the way, I like your offer, and I'm going to follow it up as well. I'm going to do the same thing with my copies. As authors, we get 10 copies. And we're looking for stories. We're looking for ransomware stories, ransomware events, things like that. And we'll pick the best. Basically, send me a DM on LinkedIn, send Mike a DM on LinkedIn, and then we'll pick the best ones, and the best ones get signed copy if that's what you want. And if you don't,
can they get it made out to eBay?
You're so funny.
You're so funny. Audiobook versions for those that don't like to hold books while they.
I literally was just listening to the audiobook version just a few minutes ago. It is very weird.
I'm curious what voice they're using. Is it good?
The guy's fine. He's a professional audiobook narrator. Mike Chamberlain is his name. I actually know a guy that does audiobook narration. His name's William Shakespeare, believe it or not. And I know him. And then I have another friend whose name is Robert Louis Stevenson. I introduced the two of them. I also know Stuart Little. I just know some random odd people. Anyway, so Mike, why don't you give us a little, there was a little story I think that can help, an analogy here with talking about doing alarms in the yard and stuff. Why don't you tell us that story?
Well, security is all about layers, whether you're talking about cybersecurity or physical security. You don't want the one bell or alarm that goes off to indicate that, a threat is right in your face. You'd prefer that, something off in the distance, tripwire, smoke, something coming across the river and making noise in the water. There's some indication at some point out in the distance that gives you the idea that something is coming, as well as the time necessary to identify the threat, if it is a threat, and respond appropriately. Like, how do I prepare for this? If you think about it, in the middle of the night, if you hear something, the first thing you do is you wake up and go, I think I heard something. And then you're going to wait a second, and then maybe you hear it again. And if not, eventually you may get up and check it out. But at that point, they're already in the house. And so What do you grab whatever's closest to you, whether it's your cat or a candlestick or a bat or a shoe. You're not truly prepared for whatever that might be. You're reacting in the moment, and that's not good. And so from a physical security perspective, typically in a neighborhood, you've got the street, you've got a curb, sidewalk, yard, fence, and then you got the perimeter of your house with doors and windows. And then inside the house, maybe outside the house too, you've got motion lights and some other things that may trigger awareness. And then you've got door and window sensors. So if any of those are interacted with, maybe you get a beep or the alarm goes off. And then hopefully you've got other stuff in the house, like a dog that's going to bark, or more lights or more people. But the point is, if a car or somebody comes off the street, there's layer one. Layer two is across the sidewalk. Maybe that's how far out your motion sensors are. And now they're in the yard. Now the light goes off or the dog starts barking. And so now there's other indicators that there's a threat approaching. And so now you're starting to respond. You're looking out the window, you're on the phone with 911, or you're grabbing your weapon, or you got your crew together to respond to this threat if it comes through the door. So that's the idea. And very similarly in cyber, we don't want to wait until something gets to our laptop and someone's moving our mouse around. We want other things between us and the bad guy, at least enough of them, more than one thing, so that we start to become aware of weird stuff much sooner than all of a sudden our files are encrypted and we can't use our computer.
Mike, I love that analogy. One thing that I know people sometimes say is you just want to make your house look less appealing for a would-be robber, right, than the house next door. And by having those motion lights or motion triggered lights and things like that, it's like, hey, maybe I should go next door and see what's there rather than trying to go to your house. Is there something similar? Like, does that analogy also apply in the cyber world as well, or not so much?
And not as much.
Okay.
So in the physical world, we've got a much more personal sense of risk, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm on the street and I'm a bad guy and I'm on the street and I'm looking at house A and house B, I'm absolutely assessing the risk to myself, my health, my consciousness, perhaps being caught and going to jail, injury. Do they have a dog? I don't like dogs, right? I don't want to get bitten. Or is there a sign in the yard that says there's an alarm system? Is there a car in the driveway that says local police department, First Amendment or Second Amendment, or don't tread on me, and I like guns, and we don't call the police, we call the landscaper. So I'm doing this assessment because I am physically involved in this threat, this crime. Cybersecurity is much different for a couple of reasons. One, very rarely do bad guys sit back in their chair and they look at company A or victim A or victim B. They don't always do that. In fact, it's very rare. The way they typically do is just cast a wide net using tools to find open windows and open doors in these victim networks and systems. And it's not until they start looking into where does this door go? Where does this window go? That then they determine that's NASA, right? I don't want to. Maybe I'm risk averse to that.
Yeah.
Versus Joe Schmo dental office. So it does happen, but not to the same degree, and definitely not early on. Like physical, I'm doing it step one. I'm assessing risk. Cyber, it's down the road a bit as they get to know who the victims are.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so that determines like how you're going to do the kinds of things. It's a good analogy of the security, but how we're going to respond is a little bit different. But I think there are some analogous things. So you literally used the word tripwire. You could have a tripwire. There's a product called Tripwire. They operate in much the same way. I think the primary thing that we're going to talk about today, I don't think there's really an analogy to that in the kinetic world. That word keeps coming up. I don't think there's really an analogy to this concept of a honeypot or a canary file. Before we talk about that, Prasanna, do you know why do we use the term canary files, or why do we use the term canary?
Of course, I've watched movies. Did they not use a canary in Zoolander? I don't think they did.
I don't think they did in Zoolander, but that's funny. I was like, why is he talking about Zoolander? Yeah. It's the phrase is the canary in the coal mine. What was that?
Yeah. So when miners would go into these coal mines, of course, at some point, oxygen gets low, right? You have a good chance of suffocating. And so what they would do is they would bring a canary, which is a little bird, with them along deep into the mines. And if a canary passed out or something else like that, then they knew, okay, there's less oxygen, probably a buildup of carbon monoxide. We need to get out of here before
Right.
we pass out, we die. So canary in a coal mine.
And of course, the honeypot, I think this is really just an analogy to Winnie the Pooh, and because he cannot resist a honeypot. So let's talk about this idea, Mike, is again that we're trying to figure out that somebody is doing something before they actually do something. Is that, I'm trying to take your analogy, which I really like, and then bring it into this world. We're trying to figure out that they're up to no good before they actually get up to no good. Does that sound right?
Close. That is one objective. Honeypots actually serve a couple of different purposes. One of them is a blatantly vulnerable honeypot is designed to entice bad guys to attack it so that we learn about their tactics and techniques. So what's the newest way bad guys are attacking the newest version of Windows or Apple mobile iOS or whatever? So we put these honeypots out there to figure out why or how bad guys are doing it. And we use that information to make our products better. Right? Or it's also a good way to attribute a given attacker's techniques and tactics and procedures. We call those TTPs. So how do we attribute then? Because maybe we've got this open case. All these victims, they're getting attacked, and we've documented those TTPs, but we can't figure out who's doing it. So we can put a honeypot out there with similar victim attributes, something that looks like the profile of a company these bad guys are attacking, and we learn from that. And it gives us an opportunity to potentially track that activity in real time. So there's that. So it's a learning tool to try and get more familiarity with bad guy TTPs. The other one is a distraction. So I've got this very valuable production network. So maybe I'm an IoT network, and IoT is very vulnerable, especially the older ones where we didn't really build secure architecture. I can ping a wellhead from a conference room. That's not good. If I build a very similar, potentially even simulated honeypot environment, bad guys compromise it and it looks and reacts just like my production environment, then they're going to stop looking. They think they've achieved their goal, right? And so it's a distraction. And then lastly, honeypots can be used as a test environment. So if it's only used for that, then we wouldn't call it a honeypot. But because we've already created this simulated environment that's supposed to replicate and behave like production, why don't I also use that for testing my changes, like change management, other stuff? So there's a couple of different ways we can use honeypots. In a real world kinetic example would be like bait cars, the auto theft division of police departments. How are bad guys stealing the brand new Cadillac when it's supposed to have these coded keys and this, that, and the other? They'll put one out on the street and they'll let the right people know that car is going to be there for a while. And then they observe bad guys and how they attempt to steal it. And then they steal it, and now we can track it and figure out all this stuff, and those bad guys get caught.
Gone in 60 seconds.
Gone in 60 seconds. It's a good show. And they do that with a variety of different things. It's not just cars. They do it with bikes and computers and anything that's of value that they've got this high volume of theft with. They'll create these bait situations where they want bad guys to take it so they can learn from it and track them and potentially curb the volume of that crime.
So a non sequitur, I'm going to comment on one of my favorite bait sort of things that people do is the porch pirates, where they do the glitter bombs.
Yep. So that's also a honeypot, right?
Yeah. It's like a honeypot with exploding honey. Yeah, I do love the porch pirate folks. And yeah, I do love that very much. And I think the idea with the honeypot, especially given what you're saying, that it's not just a matter of alerting us, but it's also a matter of learning about the attacker and also their techniques and also potentially slowing them down. That is, I hadn't actually thought about that second one, the idea that if we do a good enough honeypot that they actually might think that they've accomplished their objective. That's a really interesting method. And of course, I'm assuming that it would also activate some sort of notification, so that we know that something has happened. Did we talk? Go ahead.
But just a question on honeypots, though, right? It all boils down to, though, how realistic of a honeypot you create. Because if a bad guy knows, hey, it's like, I think, Mike, in one of the previous episodes, you talked about, okay, if malware runs and it's like, hey, this is running within a virtual machine or a sandbox machine, I think on prior episodes, right? It's okay, maybe the ransomware or malware doesn't operate in a certain way. And so I think in order for a honeypot to be useful, it needs to really emulate a real world example use case such that a bad guy doesn't know, hey, I am in this isolated network. I am attacking a machine which doesn't have any value, because then they'll just move on from that, right?
Yep. And honeypots are not, to your point, they're easy to set up, but it takes some time in management to care and feeding. But if you're a sizable organization that has a test development environment, it's a similar exercise, right? So you want to replicate to a degree or mirror your production environment so that your testing is applicable. If you can then take that test dev environment and mirror that in your honeypot, whenever you update test dev, just update the copy in the honeypot. And you should be using scrubbed or simulated data in your test dev environment. So all that stuff could, if you're doing it the right way, be pretty easy to replicate or mirror in your honeypot.
And that takes me back in the day once again. And I remember that we had a naming convention that would very much to the purpose of the server, and it would allude to the fact that it was a production server or a test or a dev server. And in this case, if the test and dev is also going to be acting as a honeypot, then you would definitely not want to do that, right? You would want it to basically...
Yeah, don't call your honeypot
similar
assets. Don't start their names with honeypot. Or test dev, yeah.
Yeah.
Honeypot 1.
Honeypot 1. Yeah, don't do that.
Someone call that a clue.
But it does, the idea is that it's going to be something like it's still running Windows 2003 server with that SMB turned on with no authentication, RDP, my favorite, the ransomware deployment protocol. RDP is turned on and it's available. All of the things that we're not supposed to do in our production environment, it's expected that you would do that in a honeypot environment.
One of the things too, bad guys are absolutely going to jump at the opportunity to get into a network like that. But at the same time, that they're going to go cautiously because of how blatantly obvious it is. So if you're gonna really walk outside with your robe open, make sure that you sprinkle in some documentation. For maybe there's a text file that says we really shouldn't be putting this online yet, or some false artifacts that would state risk or identify risk. Or my favorite is emails from executives telling IT, I don't care what the risk is, we've got to do it this way. Stuff like that would help further the story and potentially keep bad guys engaged a little longer.
Interesting. So the social engineering aspect of this is quite interesting. I'm actually thinking about when they, in World War II, when they staged the attack for D-Day, and they had that entire other fake army and they had plans and all of that, right? And they really did. They fooled them, right? That thought that this was happening. It was, but they thought it was happening in a completely different place at a completely different time. I've actually been to that location where they staged it. It was really cool, the fake tanks and things like that.
Are there sort of tools people can use for creating honeypots and configuring? I know you said it's probably not too bad to set it up, but to actually like configure it and getting it more legitimate and all the rest takes time, caring, and feeding. And so I was just wondering, what are some of the tools out there people may use for this?
There's a couple. You can just Google it. You'll find open source projects. There's one called the Honeypot Project. And so there's image files. There's pretty much everything you would need to set up your own honeypot. But really, a honeypot is just an environment that's segmented away from everything else. And it could just be a like literally a mirror of your test dev environment. Or if you've got a backup of a production environment from 20 years ago, just spin that up because all that stuff isn't going to be patched.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily need, okay, that's actually good to know because that means you don't need something special. You could use whatever you already have for the most part in order to spin up honeypots.
Yep. So there's free stuff and there's also services, mostly for the research part of that. I think T-Pot, T-Pot. It's European or somewhere overseas. It's a foreign service. And I think there's a pay for version of that and there's a free version of that.
I need to go find the link that I sent to you guys, I don't know, a week or two ago. I'm seeing advertised people on budgets or time constraints. I've been seeing this advertised as basically honeypot in a box. And it's literally, it looks around the same size as like the Firewalla, which is a product I like a lot. And it's just literally a tiny little box. It's just plug and play honeypot. I don't know much about how it works, but that's a tool that I've seen out there. I got to see if I can find that and put that in the episode description. I think just the idea is like having go back to, and we say this a lot, something is better than nothing, right? And you can walk before you can, or crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. Anything is better than nothing. What about this idea, Mike? Go ahead.
As long as you train with it. We don't have a whole lot, but I have this thing. All right. Have you ever used that thing for that purpose? A great example of that is having a cat. I have a cat. I love cats. Hypothetically, I'm actually allergic to cats, but it's just...
You don't want to pick a different example?
No, a cat is a great example. I could use a dog, but after I get through this, you'll understand why I didn't pick it. Maybe a Chihuahua, but not my dog. All right, so you have a cat. You love your cat. You pet your cat. You take care of your cat. Your cat is company. It's a domesticated animal. You don't have any other security controls in your house. Maybe you're a good fighter. You've got nails. You can scream. You can run fast, but no other real security controls. If someone breaks into your house, if you think about it and you're comfortable doing it, throw your cat at the bad person. Because the first thing the cat's going to do is claws first towards whatever it's heading towards. And put yourself in the bad guy's shoes. Someone just threw a cat at you. Are you still coming forward, or you're stopping to like defend yourself against his cat? So that gives you a couple of seconds at least to get away, because maybe you are fast. But again, because I'm not a cat person, I like cats. I'm allergic. I couldn't use dogs because obviously in that example, dogs are heavier, and dogs, if you've trained them or you've put them in that situation, would attack or at least growl and make a scene, make someone think twice. I used to have Great Pyrenees, 160-pound Great Pyrenees, super sweet dude, big male Great Pyrenees. And I was out of town once. He set off the motion alarm in the house, called the police. Police showed up to check to make sure nothing was in the house. And he got to the side door, and this big Great Pyrenees is just sitting on his butt, looking out the door, head down a little bit. And the police, I was on the phone with the officer. He said, yeah, no one's going in that house. So that's different. That's different. But if all you have is a cat and you think about it and you've actually done a little, maybe mental exercise, throwing your cat at a bad person is the next best thing to nothing, to Curtis's point. It's better than nothing.
Right.
But you have to have at least put yourself in that situation so that you can think of or do whatever that one thing is. Yeah. It's better than nothing.
Don't try it with the goldfish.
Yeah. Throwing a goldfish bowl at somebody is probably good.
Another important thing about a honeypot, we're in the action items part here. So if we're going to do something, right, if we're going to do a honeypot, part of that needs to be a notification, right? And so you do need to create a type of notification that won't easily be noticed, right? Because you want to be notified that somebody has hit the tripwire, that somebody has put their hands in the honeypot, but you don't want the bad guys to know that they've been caught with their hands in the honeypot.
You want to monitor the honeypot just like you would other parts of your network, because you need to know. You need to know bad guys are attacking your honeypot so that you can better prepare for the scenario where they attack your real network. Right. If you're using it to learn from them, obviously you're going to collect all that telemetry data. And if they start taking things from you, that's a great place to put those canary files. So now you can track where it goes.
I'm going to
Right.
just ask about canaries because we talked about it at the very beginning and then we moved off to
Yeah,
honeypots.
yeah.
And
So canary files would be something it's like a honeypot within a server, right? So you have a regular server, and then you've got these files that are you okay with that description, that it's like a honeypot within a server? Does that sound okay, Mike? Doesn't
Yeah.
sound
So
like
a
my description.
honeypot is
Okay.
really just anything that a honeypot's anything that looks appealing. It's going to attract. So you're attracting bees, you're attracting things to the honey. So yeah, the canary file could be the honey for
Right.
sure.
So it's just I think it's just a different term for kind of the same thing. It's just it's a file as opposed to an entire server, and that file could.
The objective is a little different. So the honeypot in general is designed to capture, it's designed to distract, it's designed to attract and capture activity and learn from and keep them away from the beehive. But the canary file adds a couple of other objectives to that. One, because it's a file, a particular object, and that object is typically a file, like a spreadsheet or a Word document or a file. It's not a folder, it's not a volume, it's a file. That file has its own little tripwires. And a couple of things that are going to trip them is any change to the attributes and metadata of that file. So when we set that file 2 days ago, the last accessed and created date was 2 days ago. If any of the metadata changes today, that trips the canary file. So we'll get an alert that says, hey, someone touched it. Then in addition to that, if someone takes it, we can track them. So wherever it lands, that rented command and control server, bad guy's cell phone, bad guy's laptop, it goes from here to there. It calls home, it beacons to the extent possible. If a bad guy really knew what he was doing, he would prevent that. But
like
the canary,
it's like reverse
excuse me.
malware.
Yeah, canary files could be classified as malware because the recipient isn't fully aware of the intent or behavior of what they took. So that would be classified as malware. It's not. It says it's the financial spreadsheet, but really it's canary file. So that would be classified as malware. It's not presenting itself as what it really is. But yeah, canary files do a little bit more, and it's designed to go with outside your honeypot, go with the bad guy, and hopefully report back.
It's like watching all those TV shows where it's like someone downloaded the file. Oh, I can track them with GPS at this particular location. Okay, let's go bust it and grab them.
Sorta, yeah.
Yeah. But one final thing, just a note, if you're looking at implementing a honeypot or a canary files, it's important to have your clocks synchronized. So use NTP to make sure that all your clocks are the same. Why would that matter, Mike?
Synchronization in general is just important from a networking perspective so that things work. In misaligned time sync is actually a vulnerability. And so that you could use that as an enticement. But when you're looking at collecting data for evidence and for behavior and for tracking, that information needs to be correct. It happened on this day and time, and you can tie that together with other. So if I'm going to catch a bad guy and I said, you hacked my system last Tuesday, but all the logs and event data is from 1999, yeah, dude, you're going to have trouble in court.
Or January 1st, 1970. All right. I think we've talked about canary files enough. Prasanna, any final thoughts?
You should go watch Zoolander.
Go watch. I think I got the black lung, Pop. And you, Mike, any final thoughts?
No, I think canary files and honeypots are useful tools if you've got the time to deploy them and to keep them updated, along with the playbook for what happens when bad guys actually start. It's not always bad guys. Sometimes it's just, we call them script kiddies, just the curious, low-level people that are just getting into cyber or curious about cyber. They're running queries across the internet with the tools they have access to. They're going to find your honeypot. And so what do you do? What do you do when they do? It's kind of like back in the day when your house is on fire. What do? Closest exit, stop, drop, and roll, get out of the house. We don't do that anymore. I don't think my kids would know what to do if my house caught on fire because there's no commercials, there's no public service announcements. But quite similarly, if you're going to build something to attract bad guys, make sure you've got a plan for how to handle that when it does happen.
Mike, I have one question for Mike. Since you engage with a lot of people who've been attacked by ransomware, malware, etc., how often do you see cases where the honeypot exposes the attack, the tripwire, before the main attack comes in?
Very often. If it's a representative honeypot, in other words, everything the bad guy did to this honeypot network would have been similar to what they did to the production network. If they're not the same, then you've got some indication of how a bad guy operated and got where they ended up. You can compare that to how that would have gone against the production environment. But very often, your bad guy tactics from one type of bad guy, one group, one skill set. It's kind of in the real world, we call it what's their MO, what's their modus operandi. So bad guys on the cyber side, they use the same tools, they follow the same process, they do this first and this second, or there's this decision tree, but it's almost always the same from one victim to the next.
So is it safe to say, though, if a bad guy attacks a honeypot, you detect it, there's a high likelihood that your production environment is going to be safe?
It's going to be next.
Okay. Okay. That's
so,
yes.
Yeah. So because at some point they're going to go, why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they shutting this down? Why aren't they shutting me out? I'm just in here having a good time. I'm going to invite some friends. At some point they're going to, this is weird. I wonder if we're in a honeypot. Well, now there's a good chance they're going to get upset about that. Back to Curtis's point, we've got to monitor that honeypot so that you're aware when they're attacking you. That's your defense. That's one of those layers that's going to give you time now to really put focus on your production environment because it's likely going to be the next target. And now you've got a chance to be ready and prepared and maybe even add some staff, call a friend, start blocking stuff that you don't necessarily block, start shutting remote access down and things like that. Turn off all your third-party vendors that don't need access right now, and maybe for the next 6 weeks, really put focus on that. Because if they find out that was a honeypot, yeah, they're gonna look for your real network, your real environment.
Call a friend, call a mic. All right. Yep. With that, I will say that is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.